Hello, my friend. I have a special invitation for you. I have a new, potent, concentrated group coaching program called Crucible. We begin on April 10th. You can go check out timewitchery.com/crucible, and I'm going to tell you all about it at the end of the show. So if you're interested, stay tuned. Welcome to Mind Witchery. I'm your host, Natalie Miller, and I'm so glad you're here. Hello, my dear. I'm glad you're here today. So today's episode is, it's really for me as much as it is from me. And by the way, that is how all of these spells come to be. Is like I'm over here figuring out how to make it work for myself. I'm over here trying to figure out how to be brave and balanced and rested and growing. Like these spells very much come from my own, well, the way I always put it is my own sort of journeys into the deep, dark woods of self-love and personal growth. So this one is very much coming from my lived experience because, can I tell you, I encountered a lot of resistance this week in showing up to create an episode. Now, I can think of a lot of reasons why that may be. I've been creating lots of other things lately, so my creative energy has been channeled into many, many places. I'm really invested right now in helping my body to heal. I've had some chronic health stuff that I'm kind of addressing at a deeper level. So this is all to say that it makes sense that I'm not feeling like I'm full to the brim of creative energy that's got to pour out and into this podcast. And at the same time, I'm really proud to say that I've showed up every single week since I started this podcast. I think this is episode number 86. Like 86 weeks in a row, I've showed up. Even I took a tiny break, but I showed up to create something for those breaks. And that feels so huge to me. And something that I've had to figure out how to do. So that's what today's spell is about. Today's spell is about cultivating consistency, because can I tell you, this does not come naturally to me, not at all. So perhaps you are someone for whom consistency is native, like maybe it comes naturally to you. It does not to me. So this one especially goes out to everyone who is wanting more consistency, maybe with a practice or a habit, maybe in a certain part of your day. Like this is for you, because I've really had to learn how to do this for my own self. Okay, when I say that consistency doesn't come naturally to me, I'll tell you this. There's an assessment called Clifton Strengths, and it sort of describes what you are naturally kind of tending toward, like ways of being in the world. And there are 34 Clifton Strengths, and it ranks them from 1 to 34. So for me, consistency is number 34. It is at the very, very bottom, which makes sense because at the very, very top is ideation. Like idea creation. At the very, very top is adaptability. I am a very go with the flow kind of person. So there are all kinds of consistency strategies that just do not work for me. So for example, I can't really assign a particular day to a particular task. Like I can't say, oh, on Mondays, I look at my money. It's Money Mondays. It doesn't work. It doesn't work for me. Time blocking doesn't work for me. Like I can't really say, oh, I see clients on this day at this time, and then I write on this day at that time. Nope, it doesn't work for me. I am a very adaptable, sensitive, go with the flow kind of person. If it is a cloudy day, I am like a very different inhabitant of the world than if it is a sunny day, for example. So how I have learned to cultivate consistency, because I really have. I show up for this podcast every week. I also show up for my Sunday letter every week. Every single Sunday, I send a letter for years now. I have a morning practice, a morning self-coaching practice that I do every day. That is actually a practice that I am building into my Time Witchery planner. Very exciting. Time Witchery is coming out at the end of this year, but that's something I show up for every single day. And I'm even now building in a new practice. It's an energy clearing practice, and I'm building that in now to my everyday life. So even as I am a very adaptable, go with the flow, I don't really know what I'll be doing today kind of person, at the same time, I've figured out how to cultivate consistency. And so I want to share that with you. It's something I talk about with my friends a lot. It's something I talk about with my clients a lot. And just today, it's something that I needed to tap into. I had to cast this very spell today to show up to record this episode. So here you have it. So the first thing that underlies consistency is a really clear why. For me, this is so important to have the thing, the practice, the endeavor, to have it grounded in my values. Like, why is it that I want to show up to record this podcast? Why is it that I want to show up to write a Sunday letter? Why is it that I want to build a consistent energy practice? Like, why? What are the values that undergird this? And for me, it's very important that these are personal values. Like, this is actually coming from me. So one of the values that gets me showing up for my Sunday letter and for this podcast is creativity. Like, creativity is really important to me. And I want an outlet for it. I need an occasion for it. So it helps me to have these weekly containers, a letter, a podcast, where I'm encouraged, maybe even sometimes challenged, to step into creative expression. So that's one. Another for me is reliability. It actually really matters to me to show up for you. Like, that's really helpful to me to know that you are out there relying on me publishing an episode on Thursday, to know that people are waking up on Sunday morning, checking their emails and waiting for a message from me. So this doesn't feel heavy or yucky. It doesn't feel like an obligation to me, it really feels like an honor. Like, wow, I've created this outlet for creative expression. I've created an outlet for generosity, another value that's really important to me. I like to be generous. I like to teach. I like to share what I am learning. And to know that there are people counting on that, that helps me too. So, number one, how do I maintain a consistency? Well, it's fueled by these values. It's grounded in these values: creativity, generosity, reliability. A second thing that I do to cultivate consistency is I take time really to appreciate how it feels to show up. Like how good it feels to climb the stairs in my home after I've recorded an episode, to know, okay, I showed up. This works also with things like a workout or an energy practice, or maybe for some of you, a meditation or something like that. It's like really noticing when you're done how good it feels. I've heard so many times from people, they'll say, well, I don't want to actually do the thing. I don't want to do the workout, but I want to have done the workout. And that's legitimate. So really noticing the multiple layers of satisfaction and goodness we get from showing up, that helps me to show up more consistently. It's like, oh, I know that feeling is coming. I know how good it feels to have done it. I say all of this and want to put an asterisk right here, which is that if you can't find personal values, like a personal why, in which to ground your showing up, or if it doesn't feel good to show up. So I'm thinking, for example, let's say you're trying to show up consistently for a workout that really is a big should. Like you are believing you should be running, but the why for running isn't really clear beyond that your partner does it or your fat-shamey doctor recommended it. I don't know. It's like if the why isn't personal to you, then big asterisk here. And also if it doesn't feel good, like if you come home from the run and you feel terrible. This was actually happening to me this summer. I was wanting to walk consistently. Maybe you even remember I was like, I want to walk the Appalachian Trail. I was really excited to walk. But my love, I would come home from walking and my legs would just ache. Like not in a satisfied way, but in a painful way. And like I told you, I've been figuring out some chronic health stuff, and I've been really honoring a very deep energetic depletion that I'm dealing with. And I realized that my after walk feeling was not satisfying or delicious. It was, it didn't feel good. So if you can't find a personal value, and or if it doesn't feel good to show up for the thing that you are trying to show up for, then I deeply insist that you take a closer look at why you're asking yourself to do something that you don't really want to do. There are other things you can show up for consistently. Okay? All right, so that sort of brings me to the next really important concept when it comes to cultivating consistency, and that is this. I am always remembering that I exist at choice. That is, there's never a have to. Oh, I have to record a podcast. I have to write a letter. I have to do my practice. No, never. I don't have to do anything. And as a person who more naturally orients toward adaptability and go with the flow, this is so fucking vital that I remember always, always that I exist at choice. I always have a choice. I never have to show up. I'm always choosing to show up. In that way, my consistency, and we could also say my creativity, my generosity, my reliability is coming from a self-centered place, from a place of integrity. There's no should or have to that's pushing or pulling me. I am not compelled to do these things. I am impelled. It is coming from inside me. And for me, that does a couple of things. Number one, it helps to keep my consistency flexible. And what I mean by that is, yes, I am going to show up consistently, but I'm always going to do it in a way that works for me. So for example, with these podcasts, I record them every single week, but the day and time that I record them, that is completely up to me. What I will talk about, that is what I feel like talking about. There is a great deal of adaptability. There's a ton of space for my ideation, right? I'm not a person who is, much to my producers and assistants' chagrin initially, I think, I'm not a person who can say, okay, here's the plan for the next 8 podcasts. For me, personally, that doesn't work. If I'm going to show up consistently, I know that what works for me is saying, okay, editor needs the show by this day, so I know at some point before that day, I will show up to record. And some weeks, like this week, it is at the very last minute. I don't judge that at all, because I've decided what's important is creativity, reliability, generosity, including with myself. So where the podcast is concerned, that's what I've figured out. Okay, knowing that this is kind of the due date for the episode, that's important. And knowing that I will show up every week, but I don't actually have to decide ahead of time what I'm going to be talking about. That's important, right? I've figured out what works for me. I exist at choice. I'm showing up consistently, reliably, creatively, generously, and I'm doing it in the way that works for me. Now, for me, it's not really the same with the Sunday letter. With the Sunday letter, what I have figured out is that actually writing it on Sunday mornings is what works. And this is actually, I think, a holdover, an extension of something I did for almost a decade, which was to teach yoga classes every Sunday morning. So I had cultivated over many years a practice of waking up on Sunday morning and kind of creating a bit of a little yoga sermon. The way I find it works for me is that Saturday afternoon, Saturday evening, I start to kind of open up to the ideas that want to come through. And then I trust that Sunday morning, there will be something ready to say. And I allow ample time for that to happen. So I don't schedule anything. If you could see me, you would see me sometimes waking up at like 4:30 because I woke up extra early, doing my energy practice and then sitting down to write. Or you might see me waking up at 8 and not doing the energy practice first, but making a cup of coffee and sitting down to write. So again, I don't put loads of conditions and parameters around showing up. Like, I could send a Sunday letter at 1 p.m., and that for me would be fine. That would count. I could send a Sunday letter that consists of one question, which I have done. Sometimes I don't write a whole thing. Sometimes I just ask a question. I've figured out what works for me. And this is really important, I have declared that everything counts. So there's not like some enormous bar to jump over every time I'm asking myself to show up. Everything counts. Showing up is a huge part of the point. And that was so important in getting me here today, was to say, all right, Natalie, you're doing the Expanding Capacities series, but the next Expanding Capacities spell, it just doesn't feel ready yet. So how do you show up? And I had to kind of dig into exactly what I'm sharing with you. And I thought, oh, well, yeah, that's what I'll share. I'll share what I'm actually doing right now. And that will count. And that will count. Okay. So your values and your why, really important. Appreciating how it feels to show up, really important. Remembering that you exist at choice, that you can figure out what works for you. You can make it work for you. And then allowing everything to count. Recognizing that showing up consistently in and of itself is a victory. So let's say what you're trying to do is you're trying to meditate. And you're finding it difficult to do the 25-minute meditation practice you want to do. So you figure out, okay, well, what is the very minimum way I can show up for meditation? And maybe it's, you know what, I'm going to take 3 really present, mindful breaths. You know what? I'm going to put both feet on the ground. I'm going to upturn my hands in my lap. I'm going to sit and listen. Just listen to the world around me for a few breaths. Yes, I showed up today. I showed up to meditate. Did I do my 25-minute practice? No. Does it matter? No. Because so much of the point is just cultivating consistency here. Right? So when I show up to write a Sunday letter and it turns out that all I've got in me is one question, I was still creative, I was still reliable, I was still generous, I still showed up. It counts. It all counts. Everything counts. All right, one last little bit here. It is so important to watch the stories that we tell ourselves around consistency. So important. So like I said at the very, very beginning of this episode, if you look at my Clifton strengths, you will see consistency all the way at the bottom. And I could take that and I could say, well, you see, I'm just not a person who's meant to be consistent. And indeed, I could point to, I did a little bit, but I could point to so many areas of my life where I am not consistent at all. I am responsive, I am receptive, I am flexible, I'm adaptable, I'm not consistent. But just as I exist at choice, I am also here to grow. It's a very fixed mindset kind of situation to just declare that's not who I am. I am not capable of it. much more empowering to me, much more honest, actually, is that I can use my strengths. I can tap into my strengths to learn to cultivate consistency in myself. Really, all I have to do is to figure out what works for me, because aren't there things I do consistently? Don't I consistently have my coffee in the morning? Yes, I do. Don't I consistently take a bath at night? I do. Okay, cool. How is that happening? Why is that happening? How can I tap into what's working there and apply it someplace else? You see? And look, what undergirds my coffee drinking in the mornings and bath times in the evenings is totally a personal why. It's totally appreciating how it feels. I always remember I exist at choice there. I have figured out what really works for me. I want to do those things. There is desire there. And so I tap into the desire. Why do I want to do this? Why did I want to show up for this podcast today? I tap into that desire and I use that to fuel my personal and personalized cultivation of consistency. Okay. So there are a lot of pieces to this puzzle, and I want to review them for you just one more time. Right? How do we cultivate consistency? Or rather, I'll say, how have I, as a very adaptable, go with the flow, inconsistent leaning kind of person, how have I learned to cultivate consistency? Okay? So number one, I figure out my why. I tap into the desire. Why do I want this? And I ground into values that I hold dear. Number two, I really appreciate, I give more attention and more value to how it feels when I have shown up. It's very easy to get instant, yes, that was a good idea, from coffee or from a bath. It's a little harder sometimes to get it from showing up for writing or meditating or recording, but I do it intentionally. Like, I'm about to finish this and I will walk up the stairs and I'll be like, ooh, oh gosh, that feels so good. Like it's done and it's going out to the people and I expressed myself today. Okay, so number three, I remember I exist at choice. There is no have to, ever, for me. It's want to. Nope, I want to. I don't have to do anything. I don't have to write. I don't have to record. I don't have to meditate. I exist at choice. I am choosing to do this. And in choosing to do this, number four, I am figuring out what works for me. I'm not following someone else's formula. I'm figuring out what works for me. When's the best time of day for me? What's the best approach for me? What helps me to show up? Am I a person who benefits from an app or a tracker? Am I a person who actually could care less about the app or tracker? I am that person and needs another kind of motivation, like an audience of people expecting me, a class of yogis waiting for me. Right? So whatever it is that helps me to show up, let me tap into that. Number five, everything counts when it comes to showing up consistently. Like if you're trying to walk every day, you could put on your shoes and walk out the front door and back in. And yes, you walked today. That's really, really important to broaden and to expand the criteria for what counts. And then finally, it's to be willing to edit, to keep writing the stories that we tell about ourselves. So to inhabit growth mindset here, to remember that we are always growing, we are always learning, we are always figuring it out. Even if consistency is not native to us, growth is. We are here to grow. So let us remember that, and let us not tell a story about ourselves that's all the reasons why we can't, and is rather a curiosity and openness to figuring out how we can. Okay, well, that feels like a nice ending. Thank you so much for listening. I appreciate you being here. It matters to me. As you've heard in this episode, it matters to me that you are here. Thanks so much for listening. Bye for now. Thank you for listening to this episode of Mind Witchery. To catch all the magic I'm offering, please subscribe to the show. Or if you want a little bit of weekly witchiness in your inbox, sign up for my Sunday letter at mindwitchery.com. If today's episode made you think of a friend or loved one, your sister, your neighbor, please tell them about it. We need more magic makers in this troubled world. Like all good things, this podcast is co-created by stellar people. Our music is by fabulous DJ, artist, and producer Shammy D. Our gorgeous art is by the sorcerers at New Moon Creative. Mind Witchery is produced in conjunction with Particulate Media, K.O. Myers, executive producer. And I am Natalie Miller. Till next time. Hello. As promised, here is a little bit of info about my new group coaching program called Crucible. You know what a crucible is. A crucible is a container in which transformation occurs. It's a strong container, basically like where you melt down metals so that you can make new things. You can make alloys. And my program is called Crucible because it is designed to give you a space where you can summon the courage, the inspiration, the momentum that you need to finally take action on, to finally manifest that thing that you have been wanting to do. And what is that thing? I don't know. That thing might be a new offer if you are an entrepreneur. That thing might be the idea for the book that's been swirling around in your head. It might be an outline for that book. It might be a whole short story. That thing might be a job description for the assistant that you've been wanting to hire. That thing might be your own podcast. Whatever that thing is that you keep thinking, someday I'd really love to make this happen. Crucible says, let's do it now and let's do it together. So Crucible offers 7 weeks of group coaching. Crucible offers insight into how it is exactly that I take an idea and make it real. Right? Now, this is not about me kind of imposing my method onto you, but it is about sparking your own creativity and insisting on a self-honoring way of creating. Yeah? Crucible is about community with other people who are also making it happen. And I cannot even begin to put into words how valuable that is. How much of a difference it makes to be surrounded by other people who are expanding and growing into what's next. Crucible is in large measure about helping you to claim the time and energy that you need to create what's next. And so we'll use my anti-planner, Time Witchery, to do that. We will use co-working sessions that are hosted by Flow Club. I'm very excited about that part in particular. So Crucible is not assuming that you have the willpower and courage and time and energy to make this thing happen. In fact, Crucible says, oh yeah, let's give you a place to generate that, to generate all that you need in order to manifest what it is that you want next. So you are invited. You can go check out Crucible at timewitchery.com/crucible. We begin on April 10th. We go through April and most of May. And then we get to take off for the summer, having finally taken action on that thing that you've been toying with, flirting with, wondering about, dreaming about for so long. So again, more details at timewitchery.com/crucible. I super hope you will meet me inside.